On April 6, 1975, Phuntsog Namgyal, the 12th Chogyal, or king of Sikkim, was partaking in his daily rituals when machine gun fire broke the still early morning silence. Running to a nearby window, he saw 5,000 Indian soldiers moving to surround his palace. A 19-year-old Sikkimese guard, Basanta Kumar Chetri, lay dead at the main gate. And, following a brief siege of roughly 30 minutes, the outnumbered palace guards with no other options surrendered. Less than 10 days later, over 97% of the population voted to abolish the monarchy, and with that, Sikkim became the 22nd state of India. The decision to merge Sikkim with India was not without reason from a geopolitical perspective, though. New Delhi had somewhat recently intervened in the Bangladesh War of Liberation, gaining a new, friendly neighbor, and now looked to secure its disputed northeastern border with an increasingly hostile China. I guess some things never change. For its part, the Research and Analysis Wing, India's premier foreign intelligence agency, had been laying the groundwork for such an operation since at least 1971. But, of course, the story of the now-lost Kingdom of Sikkim goes back much further than the 1970s, arguably even predating the Namgyal dynasty's founding in 1642. It's that time again to remind people to go ahead and hit the like button. As always, I find that just asking people to do so helps our videos do a lot better. So, if you're interested in more videos like these, it's a quick thing you can do to help them out. Nestled away in the eastern Himalayas, the modern state of Sikkim borders China's Tibet Autonomous Region to the north, Bhutan to the east, West Bengal to the south, and Nepal to the west. Home to Kanchenjunga, the third highest mountain in the world, it is the least populous and second smallest Indian state with a total area comparable to that of France's southern and Antarctic lands. At its zenith, the Kingdom of Sikkim included the Chunpi Valley, now a part of China, western Bhutan's Ha district, Darjeeling, and Kalimpong. Little is known of Sikkim's history prior to the 17th century, although it is believed that three tribes, the Naang, Chong, and Mon, originally inhabited these lands. At some point, likely in the 6th century, they were absorbed by the Lepcha, or Rongkup, whose exact origins remain unclear. Speaking a Tibeto-Burman language and practicing a polytheistic animist religion known as Moon or Moonism, which claims the ancestors of the Lepcha were molded from the snows of Kanchenjunga itself, these new arrivals lived alongside the Limbu, or Yakthong, whose language gave the region its name, Sikkim, derived from the Limbu words Su and Kim, meaning new house, and the Magar. Later in the 13th century, a large number of Tibetan people began migrating to Bhutan, eastern Nepal, and Sikkim. Eventually known as the Bhutia, most came in hopes of escaping the increasingly violent struggle between the Yellow Hat and Red Hat sects back in Tibet, and in time would make up the majority of the population in Sikkim's north. This process only intensified following victory of the Yellow Hat sect in the mid-1600s, and persecution of the defeated Red Hats by Gushi Khan of the Koshit Khanate, which in effect allowed for the unification of Tibet under the political and spiritual authority of the 5th Dalai Lama. It was also around this time the previously mentioned Namgyal dynasty would come into being when, in 1642, 3 lamas, going off a 9th century prophecy and seeking to spread Buddhism in the region, set off to find a person who would become the first Chogyal, or king of Sikkim. They eventually came across a 38-year-old Bhutia man churning milk somewhere near present-day Gangtok. He offered the lamas a drink and gave them shelter. After having observed more of his deeds, the 3 decided this was the man foretold of in the prophecy and brought him to Yuksum, where Phuntsog Namgyal was crowned king of Sikkim in a small ceremony on a pine-covered hill. Phuntsog as king had both spiritual and temporal duties. As spiritual leader, he was regarded as propagator of the Buddhist faith and therefore set about converting the Lepcha people while also safeguarding the Red Hat sect in Sikkim. As temporal ruler, Phuntsog began creating a centralized administration, dividing his kingdom into 12 districts under the oversight of 12 governors from the 12 chief clans of the Lepcha. He also established a council of ministers consisting of 12 members chosen from amongst the Bhutia clans of Sikkim. However, Phuntsog's rule was not accepted by all. The Limbu and Magar of southwestern Sikkim balked at Bhutia rule, which ultimately resulted in a number of punitive campaigns by the king. This culminated in the Lo Men Song Sum, a tripartite pact of sorts. Lo referring to the Bhutia, Men to the Lepcha, Song to the Limbu, and Sum meaning a treaty or agreement, in which the Lepcha and Limbu accepted Phuntsog's rule, which laid the foundation for the kingdom's expansion into the Chumpi Valley, Darjeeling, and parts of eastern Nepal. Oh, and in case you're wondering, conflict between the Bhutia and Magar eventually saw the former drive the latter out from southern Sikkim at an unspecified date. Having secured his rule, Phuntsog now focused on more spiritual matters again, constructing a number of monasteries and stupas throughout Sikkim, while Buddhism became the official state religion. In 1670, while still very much alive, the king was succeeded by his son, Tensung. Exactly why Phuntsog stepped down isn't known. But, on the advice of Lhatsen Chenpo, Tensung moved the capital to Rabdensi, a few miles east of Yeoksum. What's more, the new king created the post Changzad, or prime minister, within the previously mentioned council of ministers, and reduced the number of governors from 12 to 8. In seeking to solidify the kingdom's regional standing, Tensung made a number of strategic marriages, taking wives from Bhutan, eastern Nepal, and Tibet. Of these, his first wife from Bhutan gave birth to a daughter, Pendi Ongmu, while his second wife from Tibet later gave birth to a son, Chagdor. His third wife was a Limbu princess, and in order to consolidate his standing among said people, the king began a policy of granting titles and land. In 1700, Tensung died, and his son, Chagdor, took the throne. Now, the late king had designated Chagdor as his successor, but that still didn't exactly sit well with his older half-sister, Pendi Ongmu. She challenged the secession and invited Bhutanese intervention, with the Deb Raja, or king of Bhutan, sending a force to capture and kill her half-brother. However, with the help of a Lepcha minister, Chagdor escaped to Tibet, where he spent the next several years in exile at Lhasa. Here, he distinguished himself as a scholar of Buddhist literature, eventually being appointed chief astrologer for the 6th Dalai Lama's court. Meanwhile, back in Sikkim, Bhutanese forces had captured Rabdensi. They soon moved west, conquering Gangtok as well. Eventually, the Dalai Lama intervened, requesting the Deb Raja withdraw from Sikkim, which he did, allowing Chagdor and a small group of Tibetan advisors to return in 1710. That being said, Bhutan continued to occupy parts of eastern Sikkim, and shortly after Chagdor's return, attacked the kingdom again, resulting in the loss of territory between the Tista and Rongpo rivers. Chagdor's time in Tibet influenced him greatly, and now, back on the throne, he set about ensuring monastic discipline and the smooth regulation of Buddhism in Sikkim. A proclamation was soon issued that every second son of a Bhutia family be ordained a monk. The king also doubled down on efforts to proselytize among the Limbu. Temporal matters, however, distracted from the spiritual when, in 1712, a border dispute occurred between Bhutan and Tibet. For a variety of reasons, Chagdor failed to aid his ally, and, as a result, Lhasa dispatched a force to attack Sikkim. Further escalation was avoided when the latter agreed to pay regular tribute to Tibet. Nonetheless, bad blood, bit of gallows humor here, remained with Chagdor's half-sister, Pendi Ongmu, who had been living in Bhutan since his return. In 1714, she managed to sway a number of lamas in Sikkim, who in turn bribed Chagdor's personal physician on her behalf. Pendi Ongmu planned to finish what she had started nearly 2 decades back and assassinate the king of Sikkim. And in 1715, she did exactly that. When visiting a hot spring at Ralang, the king's physician apparently suggested he allow him to do some bloodletting, for health. The king agreed, and the physician quickly used his blade to pierce Chagdor's main artery, leaving him to bleed out among the hot springs. When he was later discovered by some attendants, it was already too late. The king was dead. Pendi Ongmu, however, didn't really get to enjoy besting her estranged half-brother, as she was soon caught near Namchi and strangled to death by having a silk scarf stuffed down her throat.